Good evening, everyone. I'm David Johnson of Transform Ed Consulting, and a shout out to my dear colleague Cassandra Williams, who is the brains behind Educational Innovations 360 Degrees. And Transform Ed Consulting offers a whole list of services, starting with program evaluation and assessment. And under Educational Innovation 360 Degrees, we have a long list again. But look for us on LinkedIn or look for our websites. It's my pleasure to welcome our guest this evening, Mr. Joey Mendoza. Joey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, David. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Joey is the guy from Corpus Christi. I think we're going to say Corpus Christi like 100 times this evening, so let's get ready for it. Joey Mendoza, Master of Ed, Corpus Christi, Texas, is an educator, leader, and consultant who supports educators and school districts with hands-on opportunities to increase STEM awareness. Through PITSCO education and community involvement, his goal is to prepare underserved students for life-changing STEM careers. Mr. Mendoza currently serves as board president for the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development chapter at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. He is also a second-year doctoral student at the same institution, Corpus Christi, studying leadership networks in South Texas communities. Mr. Mendoza earned his master's degree in educational administration, also at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. Go Islanders!
Go Durs!
How you doing tonight, Joey?
David, I'm doing well, man. Excited to get started.
That you were born and reared in Corpus Christi.
You know, I'm a beach boy deep down inside. I love a pair of shorts and some flip-flops, and yeah, definitely.
Well, it's great having you here. I have lots of questions about your background. What was your teaching area when you started out your career?
So I started teaching high school 9 through 12 social studies, so world geography, world history, and then AP world history, and I think I did 1 year U.S. history. Never taught U.S. government or economics, but yeah, social studies, did that for 6.5 years, and then I made the transition into administration for a few years, and then made my way to the regional center there in Corpus Christi, did that for another 2 years, and now I'm with PITSCO Education.
Well, how did you become interested in STEM?
You know, up front, I am not a STEM expert, right? I'm a social studies guy. I was a teacher, coach, administration, leadership is my passion.
Right.
However, when I look at the STEM world, I get excited, right, with the tools that are available for students. And so 10 months ago, when I joined PITSCO Education, I went knee deep into STEM. Got my hands dirty, got my hands on, got my mind turned on with the opportunities to serve South Texas students. Right.
Well, tell us about your company, PITSCO.
So PITSCO Education, they've been around for 52 years. A small private company out of Pittsburgh, Kansas, and we do anything from drones to drone curriculum to robotics, to aerospace, rocketry, engineering, balsa bridges, you name it, David. We've probably been in most schools in Texas, and it's an international company across the United States, obviously. But just good folks doing good work in the STEM world.
Well, Joey, you kept saying drones, and I take exception to that term. I prefer UAV. I prefer UAV, which is unmanned aerial vehicle.
You're right.
In my mind, a drone is something you pull behind you because it doesn't have its own power source, where a UAV, in fact, does have its own power source.
You're absolutely right.
Drones,
yes.
And every time I hear drones, in my head, I switch it to UAV.
Yes.
And I understand you have a UAV license.
I do. You know, again, when I joined PITSCO, one of the things that they offer is for students to go through the curriculum, go through the activities in order to prepare high school students to take the FAA Part 107 test to become a UAV pilot. So I went through the curriculum, and then took the test probably 90 days ago. So I've been a drone pilot for about 3 months. I purchased one on my own and fly it recreationally right now, but it is something that I do want to become the expert in drone. Just I got to get more flight hours under my belt, as you know. So
Well, Joey, I hope you use it for only good things.
you know it.
But along that line, um, I would take it then that you and Pisco use the UAV as a vehicle by which to teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math.
You know, David, name an industry, and drones are probably in there. You name real estate, you got a military background. You know, military is using these things. Um, I was talking to a buddy of mine who has some cattle out in West Texas, and he said what used to take an 8-man crew to cattle or to herd cattle, he said he can do it with one drone in half the time.
He can herd cattle with a
Yes,
UAV.
because the cattle are scared of the drone, so they
Oh,
funnel them in.
that would put a lot of people out of business.
It's definitely putting out a lot of people and saving a lot of people money as well, right? When it comes to agriculture, getting the aerial footage,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
roof inspections, gutter inspections, you name it. Yeah, it's an industry that just keeps growing, and there's a lot of people jumping on board in the San Antonio area, Corpus Christi area, and down in the valley to get students exposure to drones,
Yeah.
and not only that, to train them to get the experience to become certified pilots by the time they graduate.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your doctoral program. You're in your second year. What would be your research area?
You know, as we discussed earlier, I'm at the intersection of learning acceleration and then building leaderships, communities in the South Texas area. So, one idea is how do we take a group of leaders, whether educators, for profit, nonprofit, industry leaders, how do we bring them in, right? It doesn't, let's bring them in a coffee shop, right? Let's put this together. Bring them in a coffee shop. Let's say, hey, let's take off your educator lens. Let's take off your nonprofit lens. Let's take off your for profit and industry lens for 30 minutes. Okay. And let's just figure out what direction do we need to go in within our community, right? These will be people within a 30-mile radius, right? And let's create this network where we as leaders accelerate our learning, right? We always use a learning acceleration towards students,
Mm-hmm.
but I think as adults, we tend to slow down in learning for whatever reason that is, and it may be tied to that we don't have enough fun in our profession.
Okay, which leads us to our topic for this evening, making work feel like play, an educator's guide. And we have 4 agenda items: finding work career that gives energy and makes you come alive, trusting creative, chaotic learning process, see what works and what doesn't work, helping leaders create culture of support, play, and desired outcomes, and create, consume. So that little mark we have there between create and consume, do you mean that create leads to consume, or what do you mean? How
We
do you
got to
mean
create
that?
more than consume.
Create is
Yes,
larger than consume.
we got to create more than, and we can jump right into that one, right? Since you brought it
Okay.
up, and it's on my mind.
Uh-huh.
I think one of the reasons why, and this is from experience, right? And just other people that I follow and a little research that has been done, right? And you probably have done this since you have your EDD, right? Well, what's one thing that you did constantly through your program? What did they make you do? And I know what you probably know what I'm gearing to.
No, I don't. But even when I first saw your topic, uh, I began thinking about making fun out of work. And I'm going to tell you, the doctoral program was painful. It was And plus, I had all these different jobs. One
Yes.
year, my wife and I did our taxes,
Yes.
and I had 5 different whatever those forms, W-2 forms, whatever they're
Yes.
called. I had 5 of them, meaning that I did all that work while I was a doctoral student. Yeah, and I always say that it was a re-indoctrination about learning and about knowledge. And eventually the pain became pleasure. And it's pleasure to this day to endure that same sort of pain.
You
So
hit it. Yes. So through that pain, I can guarantee that you did a lot of reflecting on the process, reflecting on your leadership skills, right? And that's the piece that I want to highlight when I talk about create over consume, right? We read a lot, right? But we need to be able to write a lot and let those thoughts and ideas come out more than just consume. And that's what I mean by create over consume, right? Reflecting on the process, whether you type a lot, whether you diary, journal, that piece there is huge. And I know through the doctoral program, there's a lot of reflection assignments. And probably my first semester, I always thought, well, why are we always reflecting, right? Just thinking about thinking is what they want you to do.
right, right.
And that process just kind of gives me clarity. And I want to encourage people to do it more.
But Joey, sometimes I think it doesn't happen with everyone. And I told you a little vignette about a gentleman whom I met some months ago.
Yes.
And it seems like the doctoral process had a different effect on him. And in fact, when I first finished my doctorate, the superintendent of the district where I was working, he turned to me and says, "So now you have your union card." And I thought, is that how he perceives this thing? As just a ticket to get you entry to a particular job or a particular place? I see it as more than that.
I've never heard that, David, but I don't like the way that sounds.
But go ahead, elaborate. Please elaborate.
I don't like. I've never heard that, right? And like coming back to what you said, it's painful, right? And we put a lot of effort forward, and we make a lot of sacrifice to get this doctoral degree, and it's not just to check the box. I can tell you that it's to one leave a footprint for the next generation, and I'm talking personally, and then two to put a dent in the world in whatever dissertation topic that I choose to do. So yeah, I don't like the way that sounds.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I always say a bachelor's degree is an introduction to knowledge. A master's degree is master that particular knowledge. And a doctorate is to create knowledge. And that's what you do when you write a dissertation. You
I like that
create
better.
knowledge. Right. Right.
I like that better.
So you're saying that in order to make work feel like play, we need to create more things rather than consume things. But how about if you're at the bottom end? For example, I gave the example of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree. If you're at that lower end where you got to just engage and learn so much stuff and memorize this and learn how to do that and so on, how do you make that fun?
And I'm thinking more towards folks who are already in a leadership position,
Okay.
David, right? Maybe they're principals, they're directors, assistant superintendents, or directors in the private sector, whatever the case may be. I'm leaning towards them to create more than consume. Even just jotting down your thoughts in your notes, or if you hear something like what you just said, I took a little note of how you structured that bachelor's, master's, and doctoral, right? But just always putting stuff down and just kind of being thoughtful of the moment when something in your head clicks. It's like, okay, it's not just coming in and I'm not just putting it out the other ear. Let me make a mental note. However that works for you. Some people take notes.
All right, Joey. Here's one for you.
Okay.
You know that little tidbit of it's hard to remember when you're up to your neck in alligators. It's hard to remember that your purpose was to drain the pool. So you have busy people, and stuff is coming at them all the time. All the time, stuff is coming, and it's hard to remember that your purpose is to reflect upon some of these.
Even more of a reason to do it, David. Even more of a reason to do it, because that slows you down, right? And those things that are going 100 miles an hour on campus or in your work or high pressure situations, you know that you have a military background, right? You got to be able to slow things down when chaos is happening. And I think going old school with it and putting the pencil down to paper helps you do that.
Okay. Well, we better move on to
because we can go stay on this one for a little bit.
Can stay on this, and I've got lots of little expressions that go along with this. So here we go. Where would you like to go next, Joey?
Let's go to the first one, right? I think that this kind of ties into all of them there.
Mm-hmm.
So just making work feel like play. I think people are certain, and when I say people, I'm always, it's K through 12 folks, right? Because that's my background. That's all I know. When I talk about leaders, when I talk about people, I have the lens of a K through 12, maybe even higher ed folks. So I just wanted to put that for context. I think people in that space are starving for joy, right? And it starts with the leaders. And it goes back to that reflecting process. But also, I heard a good gentleman speak today, and I'm glad he got out there and he shared what he shared, because it was something that I wanted to talk about today, right? Where it's okay to be open about not being okay, one, but what are you doing about it, right? There's the intersection of, and this is just from my experience, happy leaders, good leaders, thoughtful leaders have a happy home, right? And when things are great in your personal life, things are great on your campus and you become a great leader, right? It's funny how those two connect, right? And you're laughing because I'm sure you know.
There's an expression that goes along with that one too.
Yes.
Something about a happy house.
Yes. And so, but you don't hear a lot of K through 12, and there might be a fine line that you have to walk, right, when it comes to getting too personal with your staff, with your teachers, with your colleagues. I understand that. But at the same time, if things are not working, we got to take different avenues to get to people. And I think that's one area that I'd like to see educators lean into a little bit more. Hey, have the conversation. How are things going at home versus how are things going in your classroom only, right? Make it more personable. Because if things are taken care, as you know, David, if things are going well at home, then that's going to reflect on your campus, in your classroom, so on and so forth.
Now, Joey, let me hit you with one here. Are you familiar with the sweet spot?
Yeah.
Well, people use that a number of ways.
Yes.
But in the case of career,
yes,
you figure out what you're good at doing, what the market will pay you to do, and what you enjoy doing, and where they intersect is the sweet spot. So I would imagine if you're speaking about leaders, superintendents, principals, and such, I would imagine that at that point in their careers, they're in their sweet spots. What do you think?
Yes and no.
Okay, go on.
You knew that answer was coming. Maybe. and I say that just because a lot of people are leaving the educational space, right? So if they were in their sweet spot, then there wouldn't be this mass exodus of teachers, administrators across the nation, not just in here in Texas.
Well, but don't you think that people would have left the profession before they got to those leadership positions? For example, we know that teachers and studies show that beginning teachers, there's a big exodus at the 5-year point or before the 5-year point. So don't you think that if you were a principal or somehow an educational leader, that you would have already met or found or be in your sweet spot?
I think when you get into those roles, you are in your sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, there's a lot of red tape that comes with those sweet spots. There's a lot of constraints that come with those sweet spots. There's a lot of, how can I phrase this nicely? There's not a lot of creative ability to, hey, I saw this idea yesterday. Can we try this today? There's none.
Not.
What's that?
You think not, huh? I'm thinking back to, in fact, you might know the expression, you manage the things that you must do so
Correct.
that you can do the things you want to do.
Correct.
And it might take a year or so to get settled into your particular position where you are able to manage all the things that you must do. And then you have an opportunity to do things that you want to do.
And I'm not saying that those things are not happening.
Mhm.
I like to move very quickly. It's a good and bad thing, right? And as we know, public education moves a little slow. But I think we're at a place with our students, with our teachers, with our administrators, that we got to move a little faster when it comes to the K through 12 experience at all levels, when it comes to community engagement, but especially keeping our administrators and teachers in the profession. And back to our point that we're talking about, how do we do that? So we have to make work feel like play.
Okay.
Right. And what that's the sweet spot that we need to be in. And
all right, Joey, I'm watching the clock. The clock.
Yes.
Let's dig into this making work feel like play. Let's go straight to the issue at hand. Make work feel like play. How?
Yes. So and you're gonna be my example, David. Okay. So we've been on here 22 minutes, and you must have smiled 100 times already and laughed. Why?
Why? I like you.
And you enjoy what you do. And you exactly. Right?
Uh-huh.
This is fun. Uh-huh. This is what work should feel like, David. Uh-huh. How do we transfer this, or how does this get into our communities? How does this get into our schools? This energy, those smiles, this conversation.
All right. What's the answer?
And it's a mystery, right? But
if you're a building administrator, what would you do?
Here's what I would do. Mm-hmm. I would take a little different approach as far as being the model, right? Here's the model of a traditional leader, right? Very closed off with their emotions. And I get it. You have to be at a certain point, David. I get all that, right? But at some point, you have to have a playful attitude within yourself, right? And I know a lot of people don't have that personality, but at the highest levels, and I'm no expert when it comes to leadership, but at the highest levels, David, I've seen CEOs, I've seen directors, I've seen leaders in K through 12 space, and they all have this playful attitude when it comes to work.
All right, let me throw this at you. Current terms in all of the leadership material that we read these days, two terms pop out: authenticity and vulnerability. So are you suggesting that leaders, in your description, does that include authenticity and vulnerability?
1,000%.
Go on.
Yes, 1,000%. It's and that's the sweet spot, right? It's hard to be authentic. And let me back up a little bit. The authentic leaders, right, come off as being genuine, as being empathetic, all the characteristics that we list. One thing that never gets mentioned or being described as a leader is somebody who is playful. You never hear anybody describe a leader as being playful. They have a playful attitude, or they're just playful in their work. And as children, right, we know the research shows that in order for children to learn, that they got to have fun. So at what point, and I don't know the research behind, there hasn't been much done. There hasn't been much research done when it comes to fun in the workplace or adults having fun, but I don't know what age we consider or we stop having fun.
Mm.
And I think the leaders that do not lose that childlike
Mm-hmm.
ability to have fun have
Mm-hmm.
some of the most success in their leadership position and longevity. I'm going to go on and live
Okay.
and say that. And again, there's no research behind it to say that.
Okay.
It's just it's something of my interest, and I think just from a glance, from an outsider's perspective, some of the leaders that I admire, some of my mentors that I have in my network, all have this playful.
Okay. All right, Joey.
attitude.
All right, Joey. Let's make it concrete. Imagine now that you've got principals, you've got educational leaders watching this program tonight. What can they do tomorrow that would be more playful or come across as the leadership you described?
It's not a switch that you can just go and turn on, David. Right? I think it takes a certain personality to do it. And it is in the K through 12 space that the playful attitude can get a call to the HR pretty quickly, if you know what I mean, right? So I'd be careful treading that water. But if you're naturally good at it, then let that shine and let that come through.
The authenticity.
Yes. Just dig more into that. Just, hey, how's it going at home? Right? More or little, you know how powerful small talk is, right? So more emphasis on the small talk. You're going to have time to dig into the data, to dig into the students. That's going to get taken care of. But what's going on at the house? Right? Those little conversations like that, the tidbits, and then remembering facts about it's personalizing it, David. You have to.
Joey, we have like 2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes. So we have two topics we have not touched: trusting the creative, chaotic learning process, helping leaders create culture of support, play, and desired outcomes. Hit one of them real quick.
You know, I'm going to go back to the creative process, right? Just because I don't want us to lose that childlike attitude that allows for that creativity, right? Every so often we get our blinders on and we have this mission to go 187 days without trying anything new, right? Because you've done it for 5 years and you know what works. Yes, that's great, but the creative process as individuals, as human beings, is crucial to our health, to our mental health, and to our growth as people.
Joey, we've covered a lot of topics and we couldn't get into each of them as I would have liked, and I'm sure you would have liked. So what would be the takeaway you would like people to have from our conversation?
The takeaway would be to have more fun in the work that you're doing, right? If work traditionally is not going to be fun, but if we can find that sweet spot, whatever it is your niche is, dig deeper into that, whether that's curriculum, whether that's leadership, and go 100 miles an hour into that.
And what do you want people to do with this? What is the call to action?
I want us to stay more childlike and become these creative leaders that instead of education becoming a cyclical process, that it's always going to the right and up.
And if people want to know more, how do they contact you? You are the man. How do you want people to contact you?
David, I'm active on Twitter. You can see my handle there, but I think the biggest platform that people can reach out to me, and happy to have a conversation on STEM, on making work feel like playing, the leadership theory in general. You can meet me on LinkedIn.
Our guest tonight is or has been Joey Mendoza of Corpus Christi, Texas. He is an educator, leader, and consultant who supports educators and districts with hands-on opportunities to increase STEM awareness. He's also a UAV pilot, not a drone pilot, but a UAV pilot. Joey, thanks for being our guest this evening, and good night to you, and good night to all of our audience.